Welcome everybody to another episode of the Cover 2 presented by Tigervision. I'm Patrick Neal with Grayson Mann. As always, it is episode 27, and I gotta apologize. So originally we were gonna do a mock draft, but to be honest with you, last week I got my dates confused, and I was thinking the NFL draft was this week. However, it is next week, so we will be doing that next week. You'll have that to look forward to. Today, Grayson, what are we talking about?
Today we got the NBA playoffs, the opening. A lot of great stuff that's already happened this weekend, some upsets, some classics. A couple birds were flipped too, but that's for later. We got the spring games all across the country, including your university in Clemson. And then we have a bunch of SEC schools that kicked off.
Yep.
And then we have the top 25s, the way too early that people will probably be complaining about on Twitter. They're out as well.
Yep, PFF released their top 25 rankings, so we're going to discuss them a little bit and see if there's anything we agree with, anything we disagree with. But first, I guess we can start NBA playoffs. We don't talk NBA a lot on this podcast, on this show, but, you know, it's news. And in kind of an off week, football-wise, the NBA playoffs are just getting started, so no better time to talk about it than now.
Yeah, I mean, some things to kind of pick up on if, like, you're looking to get invested. If you're a LeBron hater, he's not in the playoffs. Yep. So no Disney or A-to-Day Davis.
Yep.
The Splash Brothers, if you're a Warriors fan, or if you're coming out of your shell from 2016, the Warriors are back. They look really good.
It's basically 2016 again.
Yeah, Celtics are good again. Kyrie Irving and the Celtics are beefing, so that's really fun to watch.
Kyrie just got fined $50,000.
I don't think he minds paying that at all.
For returning the same level of energy as he said.
Think of it as a high five, but he's missing 4 of his fingers for the high five.
Yep.
He did not make contact.
Yeah, that game was awesome, by the way.
It was fantastic. Frustrating, too.
If you did not see it, Grayson here is a Celtics fan, as you can tell by his New England Patriots fandom. Anyways, the game was awesome. I mean, this should be a great series. Boston's the 2 seed, Brooklyn's the 7 seed, and that final play in which Marcus Smart, your defensive player of the year.
That's right.
First guard since 1996, Gary Payton. Jaylen Brown kicked it out to him. He looked like he was about to shoot the 3. A lot of people probably thought he was going to shoot the 3 because it's kind of been a tendency for Marcus Smart to do stuff like that.
Sometimes Marcus does questionable things, but like it really speaks to how Ime Udoka, who's the first-year head coach of the Celtics, has really got this team to buy in on like really not. Cause last year, it really, if you're a Boston Celtics fan or in the NBA, it was a lot of iso ball. It was a lot of just let me get my shot, then you'll get your shot. The team's really finding the best shot possible. They're moving the ball really well. So a lot of people are saying, well, the last year's team, Marcus would have put that up for sure, and it probably would have rimmed out or would have just clanked off the side. But he found Tatum cutting to the basket, and it was an incredible spin. And at first I thought it was called off because the guy was like, hey, waved it off. And I was like, no, please, don't do this.
Yeah, but it was a fantastic play. Marcus Smart got 2 guys to jump. I believe it was Nick Claxton and Bruce Brown. Fed it to Tatum, who was cutting, spun move behind Kyrie Irving for the layup.
And you can see, if you're watching on YouTube, the picture. I'm sure that's going to be in like the Hall of Fame for Celtics fans, just because the beef was strong.
Well, I guess Sunday. It depends how the rest of the series goes.
That's true. If the Celtics end up getting like
5.
Yeah, they could. They really could. But this is more of a like. This was the first round series that you would imagine happening in the conference finals, just in terms of skill level, because Boston's been really good this year, but the Nets, despite all that's happened, have the roster that could win the finals. For sure. So it's 2 of the best teams in the NBA, and one of them's going to go out in the first round. It's really an unfortunate. Now, I know that if you're a Celtics fan or you're a Kyrie hater, you got to admit the dude balled out on Sunday. He could not miss a shot.
And I believe he's still fasting.
Yeah, which is super impressive.
Which is so impressive.
Fasting for Ramadan.
I don't know how he does that.
Yeah, because and that's a 3:30 game, so he's not. I think it's sunrise to sundown. They're not drinking or eating, which is.
Well, you can drink water.
Okay, I would be unbelievably cranky, and to be able to go out and believe he put up 40 points, and to be able to like.
It was around that.
Take the emotional charge too of like fans cursing at you, and Boston fans. They're mean.
Oh yeah, for sure.
They're certainly mean. So shout out to him, despite like any grievances I or any Boston fans may have against him. I have a lot of respect for him coming out and performing like he did.
Yeah. But yeah, you're talking about the Warriors a little bit. Honestly, they're kind of a fun team to watch, even though that kind of sounds weird considering a lot of people, bandwagon and stuff like that. But that lineup that they put out last night, Monday night,
the death lineup
of Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Jordan Poole, who has come into his own and is a fantastic player now, Draymond Green, and Andrew Wiggins, all-star starter.
Andrew Wiggins. I would have thought.
That lineup is fast. It's very small, but they're able to score quickly. And they were playing great defense last night as well.
Yeah, it's the small ball lineup, really, if you want to throw it back to 2016 when they did have Draymond at the 5 and they would just let Steph Curry, they'd let Klay Thompson,
Iguodala.
They let him go to work. And Jordan Poole, he's been really impressive in these playoffs. He's really, I think because Steph Curry's still nursing an injury, he's finding his way back, so they've given Poole a lot more opportunity.
Yeah, Curry was still coming off the bench, but there was a stretch last night in the third quarter, I believe, where Jordan Poole hit 2 back-to-back threes and then proceeded to have a really nice touch pass to Bjelica down low. It was a great game for him. And unfortunately, I would like to see that. I think it's probably a lock that the Warriors are going to win this series, but it's a little unfortunate because the Nuggets have had so many injuries. Michael Porter Jr. is out. Jamal Murray's been out for a really long time. It would be a much better series if they were playing, but Jokic, unfortunately, while he has been able to do a lot of it on his own this season, it doesn't look like it's going to happen in the playoffs.
And when this is like we said, March Madness, this is the time to get hot, and this is especially when they're feeling it. Like when your contributors besides the names like Curry and Thompson are dropping what Jordan Poole's been doing, it's a tough ask for any team, especially when you're lacking top scorers like Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray. It's really tough.
For sure.
One other thing that really, and then we'll move, because I know we are a college football show first, and it is near and dear to my heart, but I just wanted to talk playoffs first. There's a big upset in the first couple games. We had Karl Anthony Towns and a young kid in Anthony Edwards going completely ballistic against Ja Morant, who many think, besides like Boston and Golden State and the Suns, one of the better teams in the NBA and the Memphis Grizzlies.
Yeah, I mean, I believe they had the second best record when everything was said and done to finish out the season. And Memphis is a team that I think a lot of people really, really like, really enjoy watching. Ja Morant's fun to watch. They have a very young team. They're really not supposed to be in this position.
No, they're certainly ahead of schedule.
But Minnesota is just as fun, I think, as them. You have Pat Beverly, who's being a menace.
He's drinking Bud Light on the what was it, like during his press conference, he just whips out a Bud Light, the tall boy.
Oh, I didn't see that, but
and he just starts drinking during
that sounds just like him.
The NBA also probably fined him too, but
maybe. But the Timberwolves are fun to watch. You have D'Angelo Russell, who I've always enjoyed watching.
Oh, for sure.
Especially when he was on that Brooklyn team a few years ago. That had a really fun atmosphere. You've got Anthony Edwards, who I believe. Was it the 4th most points scored ever in a playoff debut?
It was. I think it was
something like
38 or something like that.
Yeah, 36, 38, something like that. He's been playing very, very well. That whole draft class, I remember when it was right before the draft, a whole bunch of people were talking about how it's a down year. But you've got like Anthony Edwards, LaMelo Ball, Tyrese Halliburton, players like them all performing very, very well. So. In all honesty, I think this is the most talented the NBA has ever been.
I agree, because you can really find in some of these games where all 5 starters on each team have something to contribute. It's really insane to watch. It's a really, from 2 years ago, you really think about how far, and it's weird to say, but you go from a playoff system where it was in the bubble in a quiet gym to maybe a couple thousand fans here or there, depending on what city you're in. And now everybody's back. It feels like we've kind of returned, and the talent is also returned with that.
Side note, but I feel like because the league is so talented right now, I feel like maybe there's expansion soon. I don't know, maybe you expand to Seattle or something.
Supersonics.
Yeah,
can we see them back?
Bring them back. But like, you look top down, the league. There's honestly an all-star or fringe all-star that I think 10 years ago were probably a lock. When you remember, you had the likes of. I'm not hating on Kyle Korver or Jeff Teague or
Kyle Korver.
But it wasn't 10 years ago, but like 2016, 2017
Right.
Hawks team.
That was when the Hawks were really good. Yeah, they still.
But
they're
I mean, you've had kind of all-star teams where there have been players that haven't exactly stood out, but I think the league right now is in a fantastic place.
Absolutely. So do we want to get to the spring games? And this is kind of like the return to form.
Real quick, finals pick for
Finals pick.
NBA.
I'm going to
before
roll
we transition.
my Boston Celtics to play the Golden State Warriors in the NBA Finals.
Okay, that'd be a fun one to watch. I think the Suns probably get back. Honestly, I kind of feel like it's going to be a repeat of last year, except the Suns
Bucks.
win it. I would like to see Chris Paul at some point get a ring.
I would.
So I think it's probably Suns Bucks repeat.
I like how we have different picks though.
Mm-hmm.
It makes things interesting.
Well, I feel like in each conference there's honestly 4, 5, 6 teams that could make it to the finals realistically.
That's never the case, really.
Yeah, especially a few years ago.
Yeah.
But we will transition now. There were a ton of spring games, especially this weekend. 2 weeks ago, Clemson had a spring game. But this weekend, we also had Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, South Carolina, Texas A&M, Auburn. I think we've got Oregon, Ole Miss coming this week.
Wake Forest was yesterday, I believe.
Really?
I think it was.
I must have missed that one.
I was at Clemson Your Pie watching it, and they looked really good.
Your Pie, by the way, great
pizza.
restaurant.
This episode is not sponsored, unfortunately, by
I
Your
wish.
Pie, but it would
I
be
wish.
nice.
But yeah, if you've never checked out Your Pie, it is a fantastic pizza
It's
restaurant.
very solid.
You get to make your own pizza. It's kind of like a sandwich or like a Subway, but
Pizza
much better
Moe's.
quality.
Yeah,
And that you get to go down the line.
that's
So,
right.
If we want to talking points from all these games, I guess we can go back 2 weeks to the Clemson game.
Yeah.
Defense looks fantastic. I
cool.
honestly think it'll be the best in the country,
I think that the defensive line
especially.
they've also carried the similar mantra to what the Christian Wilkins D lineman had, which is they have like a identity.
Yep, they're the
Power Rangers.
Avengers.
They're the Avengers. Shout out to whoever. I wonder if they just sit in the locker room. They're like thinking about like, oh, we could be this superhero squad or something like that.
Yeah.
They must have just seen like a new Marvel show and been like, you know what, that works.
Yeah, but you've got KJ Henry, you've got Xavier Thomas, you've got Brian Brzee coming back. You've got so many guys on that.
the backups
offensive
too.
line.
You can substitute.
They're so deep.
It's
It is awesome.
insane. I think the corners too are going to be really surprising. This
Nate
year.
Wiggins is going to look to step up.
Oh,
You've got Andrew Makuba who can play slot corner, who can play safety, who can play anywhere.
Linebackers, Trent Simpson, Barrett Carter, those guys are going to be insane. Like
The defense is going to be awesome. The offense didn't a lot of people are saying it didn't perform as well as they probably hoped.
let's take a timeout here.
But you've got a lot of injuries. You have, like I said, a lot of injuries. You have a few guys coming in that haven't played, a little bit of inexperience, but I think the offense will be in a good spot going into the year.
I think that a lot of people, they're going to see that spring game tape, especially offensively, and they're going to see miscommunication on offensive line. They're going to see a throw or two that could have been. You always have that in the spring. You have things that like you get to work out. I feel like for the defense, it's easier to get up to speed in the spring than the offense because there's so many intricacies and so many little things to work out. But for DJ and anybody at home that's worried about this team, the offensive line was split up. Our 2 starting running backs were out. Some receivers were out too. This was a game that was just getting the young guys experience and getting the quarterback's arm warm.
Yeah.
Cade looked good. DJ looked good. That throw to Ngata, so nice. It was very good.
And I appreciate that Coach Sweeney is having such confidence in DJ Uiagalelei.
Let's not get any summer controversy.
Cade Klubnik is very, very good as well. But I appreciate that he's sticking to his principles. He's sticking to what he's believed in, what's brought Clemson so much success. And I think it's going to be a fantastic season.
Yeah.
I think they should be right back. Last year they finished top 15, had 10 wins. It wasn't necessarily a bad season.
It wasn't a disaster. To the standard that's been set
of being a championship contender.
Yeah.
I think they'll be right back where they were.
Yeah.
Georgia, I watched about 90% of the spring game. Georgia's offense, I think, will be legit. I think it'll be better than last year. It was already very, very good, very efficient. But I think their passing game will be a lot better.
Does Stetson start, do you believe?
So I think Stetson's gonna start the beginning of the season, and he looked decent in this spring game. I believe he had. I don't remember the stats exactly. I think he had 3 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. But he is going to have so many weapons. He's going to have Eric Gilbert, Brock Bowers, Darnell Washington, all just tight ends, by the way.
Brock Bowers might be the best tight end, if not the best tight end in the country.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have all 3 of those guys. Darnell Washington, 6'7". Brock Bowers, I don't know his height exactly, but he's a versatile weapon.
He's a speedster.
At tight end. You've got Eric Gilbert, who was the former number 1, perhaps the highest-rated tight end recruit of all time. He caught 2 or 3 touchdowns, I believe. I believe it was
Casually.
2. But all those guys are just tight ends. Then you've also got Dominique Blaylock coming back. Shout out Walton High School, where I'm from. You've got A.D. Mitchell. You've got McIntosh. You've got Kendall Milton. So many weapons, plus a solid offensive line. I don't know if the defense is going to be as good as it was
There would be,
year.
I'm going to just, this isn't meant to be an insult to Georgia. There's no possible way that the defense would have been as good as it was last. That defense last year was historically good.
Yeah, and maybe the offense looked better because that defense has a lot of new faces on it, but the offense looked fantastic.
And when you look like you're flowing in the spring, there's so many levels you can get to in the summer when you're not having to play catch up, which is fantastic for them. Another team that impressed me was South Carolina, especially with I think more or less not in what I saw on the field, but in terms of the culture and the excitement that it's exciting. And as a Clemson fan, and this is a lot of Clemson people are going to watch the show, but it's exciting to have your rival be good because then it gives you a really nice test at the end of the year instead of a blowout, which I think it makes the rivalry more exciting instead of just Clemson or Carolina just kicking the snot out of you in the end of November.
Yeah, I mean, I watched a little bit of the spring game. I think watch out for Marshawn Lloyd. I watched a few plays of him. I believe he's number 1. He was a running back that had a few very nice plays. As a Clemson student, I'm hoping they're not too good, but I would like to see, South Carolina's, they got to step up. They got to, carry their weight in the rivalry a little bit more than 30-0. So
Spencer Rattler, too, calling out Oklahoma a little bit, saying it's good to be out of a toxic situation. Now, do we think that it's toxic because he was there, or was it because of Lincoln Riley?
Probably a combination of both.
Probably.
But what you were saying with the culture, that place was packed for a spring game, which was cool to see, considering the likes of Alabama, albeit it was raining for Alabama's spring game, was kind of disappointing for the numbers. But if we want to transition to Alabama, I don't know. Their offensive line, did not look great.
That was a weakness last year. That's what lost them the national championship.
Yeah, and especially with them losing Evan Neal to the upcoming draft. Bryce Young did not look overly comfortable. I thought Jalen Milroe, who is their 2nd or 3rd string quarterback, looked better than Bryce Young.
Really? Number 1 pick?
Yeah, and I also think that Jahmyr Gibbs had a solid game. He broke off a really, really nice run, but their weapons are not going to be nearly as good, I think, as they were last year.
Yeah, they've started to finally kind of, and not the Bama receivers. They'll eventually they'll find one that'll be super really complimentary, but
and maybe that's Jermaine Burton from Georgia.
Yeah, but it's more or less they're coming down to earth. They've had the last 4 years where they've just been able to produce speed and be able to just dominate in that sense. And we kind of got a preview of it in the national championship when you had Mechie go on the SEC championship, and then you had Jamison Williams go out in the first quarter, and how the Bama offense kind of struggled a bit to be able to move the ball, and Bryce Young didn't look as comfortable when your safety blanket and their safety blanket and Slade Bolden is gone. I think Clemson had to learn to transition from.
Yeah. Alabama, their defense, though, similar to Clemson, looked elite.
Oh, yeah.
You had Will Anderson had to come off the field because it was just unfair for the offensive line.
It's like, hey, man, you've done enough.
Yeah, he looked really, really good. You also had Dallas Turner look really, really good. Afterwards, there was a video of him trying to give one of the players on the losing team, some cake, but he was right next to Nick Saban, and Nick Saban shoot him away because
Bill Nick.
You get beans and Frank, I believe is what it's called, beans and hot dogs, if you lose the spring game.
It doesn't seem like too bad of a consolation prize.
If you've seen a photo, it's not great.
It's
looking.
not?
No.
They don't like separate it? It's just like...
No,
Oh,
not at all.
Never mind.
But Alabama's defense, I think, along with Clemson's, will be one of the top in the country. Ohio State, another team kind of like Georgia. Their offense really showed out. You're going to have a three-headed monster of Jackson Smith and Jigba, Emeka Egbuka, and Marvin Harrison Jr., along with Julian Fleming, Travion Henderson.
It's a good time to be CJ
Joe Royer, the tight end, a whole bunch of guys. That offense is going to be as stacked as ever.
It's a nice time to be CJ Stroud, for sure.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But it was also cool to see them honoring Dwayne Haskins.
Absolutely.
They wore patches on their helmets, on their jerseys, I believe. CJ Stroud wore Dwayne Haskins' jersey. That was really cool to see. It was awful news hearing that.
Yeah, it was terrible.
As somebody who really enjoyed watching Dwayne Haskins, it was awful to hear. But Ohio State looks to be in prime position to compete for a championship.
Absolutely.
I think their defense will be a little bit improved with Jim Knowles. You'll have another year. You'll have another year with the likes of Jack Sawyer, Tyleek Williams, players like that, and they're going to have a little bit more experience. And I think they'll be in prime position.
They'll be hungry this year, especially. They're going to have that Michigan loss very fresh in their heads. But here we have the way too early top 25. But it is tradition in college football is we like to, since we have so much time in between one spot and the other, we like to really map out how we think things are going to kind of shape out to start the year. So the top 25 came out. If you had not been aware of it, PFF released their list.
PFF released theirs.
And this is the list we're going to be. We've know that ESPN's released their FPI, but that's more of like
that one looked a little interesting.
That
by
was
the way.
FPI is more of just like stats based than it is really on like the voters.
Yeah, and it had Texas at 6 and Auburn at 10.
So you know that like.
So it was a little interesting considering it also had Auburn as the toughest schedule. I think Auburn, in all honesty, might be a bottom 3 SEC team.
Auburn's gonna struggle. It's not gonna be good.
I don't take them over any SEC team besides Missouri and Vanderbilt. In all honesty,
that's not good company.
Kentucky, Tennessee, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Florida, LSU. I'm taking all those teams over Auburn.
Yeah. So something that's notable to me in this list, Georgia's not one. We kind of expected because it's going to probably Bama carries such a name, but I guess they're the national championship. They should probably start out as one.
I think after watching the spring games this weekend,
Georgia should
be 1. I think Ohio State should probably be 2.
Bama
Alabama 3, Clemson 4.
Yeah.
I think.
Now you're gonna think, why is Clemson at 4? There's multiple combinations. They're bringing back that awesome defense, and I think that Clemson's gotten to the point where their name carries a lot of weight within the top 25, especially starting out. So there's an expectation for Clemson now every year to be great. Michigan at 5. They really they lose Aiden Hutchinson, but they're going to be able to probably pick it up on the offensive end with people like Hassan Haskins, Blake Corum.
I believe Hassan Haskins graduated.
Oh, right.
They're going to have Ronnie Bell back. I think their passing game will be a little bit better, but I think their running game might suffer a little bit. It's also going to be interesting who starts for him, Cade McNamara or J.J. McCarthy.
It's probably going to be J.J.
But you never know. So this list, PFF, they got Bama at 1, Ohio State 2, Georgia 3, Clemson 4, Michigan 5, as we said. A&M at 6. That's probably a lot to do with their incoming recruiting class. By the way, Evan Stewart, watched some highlights on him from the spring game. Looks very, very good. He was, I believe, the 2nd-rated wide receiver in the class, so watch out for him. Utah's returning a lot. They're at 7. They return Cam Rising. They return I believe it's Thomas's last name, the running back. They lose Devin Lloyd, but Utah should be pretty decent.
Yeah.
They got USC above Oklahoma at 8 and 9.
Interesting.
So that's kind of where their head's at. I don't
Yeah,
know
I
about
think
that one.
USC is going to be the team that's going to carry the most hype going into the year, and probably a little overrated in my mind. I think USC will be a team that either will shock everybody and they'll just go insane and win the Pac-12, or they'll kind of be, this is going to be like their baby year, and they'll be like 10-3. They'll kind of, there'll be flashes of greatness, but it's going to take some time. Maybe they lose a game they shouldn't, just because there's going to be some inexperience with this roster. But Caleb Williams will probably, I imagine it's the same offense that Lincoln Riley had in Oklahoma, so there's not going to be any, he's going to have to transition. The only thing that Caleb Williams is going to really have to worry about is he's staying at LA instead of Oklahoma this time. The offense will relatively probably be the same.
Yeah, I think so as well. Interesting to note, Wake Forest is at 10, Notre Dame 11,
ACC.
Arkansas is 12, Pitt 13, Texas 14, South Carolina 15, Miami 16, and NC State 17. You mentioned ACC. What I was going to say is in the top 17, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if you want to count ACC adjacent Notre Dame, there are 6 teams in the top 17 that are
They always have a home.
ACC.
They always have a home in the conference.
I mean, they played for an ACC championship 2 years ago, so I feel like
That's fresh.
that's ACC dominance. It means more.
It does.
But I also got to mention the SEC has just as many teams in the top 17.
Our
So,
boy Kiffin is 24th.
yep, he is. I think he'll be one that rises. I think Ole Miss is going to have a good season. We'll see their spring game this weekend. Oregon just makes the top 25 with Dan Lanning as their new head coach. Wisconsin's one at 21. I could see being a little bit underrated. I could see them cracking top 15, top 10. I think they'll be a solid team.
Which team out of the top 10, besides the one we talked about in USC, is probably the most likely to slip out?
Yeah, because there's usually every year, especially
There's usually
the
a couple.
preseason rankings, there's always one team in the top 10 that finishes unranked. You know, you had North Carolina last year. I think USC or Oklahoma, just because there's so much turnover, are probably the most likely to finish outside the top 10, outside the top 25.
I could see Wake Forest too having a little bit of a drop off
Maybe,
here. But it depends really on Sam Hartman.
Yeah, I think it's those 3 are the most likely to.
I'm gonna say it that the potential. This happens every year with A&M. They get super highly rated,
Yeah.
and then they drop just completely off.
Well, they had kind of an up and down. They started really high, then ended up unranked, beat Alabama, and ended up back high up in the rankings. I think if there's anything else, NC State returns a lot. They're at 17.
Mm-hmm.
They could definitely be a top 10 team. Contending for an ACC championship come December.
Yeah.
But I think for the most part there isn't too much that I disagree with. South Carolina's at 15, which is kind of cool to see.
Feels like 2012.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really don't have any gripes with the list, to be honest with you, and I'm sure I will at some point.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's pretty much it for us this week. Again, we will have mock draft special next week.
We're probably gonna do a back to you're gonna pick one and then I'm gonna pick one.
I think that's what we'll do.
That'll be fun.
We'll have that to look forward to. We're gonna have to speed run it.
Yeah, because if we sit here and we're gonna be here a while, and I think our producer Zach, shout out always to my man Zach, would probably it would be a rough day for him.
Yep.
Because we'd probably be for hours.
But we thank you all for tuning in. However you may be doing that, podcast form, YouTube form, we thank you. Press all the buttons, as always.
Just press all the buttons. Just
like, comment, subscribe, rate, review, share, all that jazz. And we'll see you all next week.
Let's do it.
Have a good one.